Well, good to see you guys. Thanks for joining in. We're continue to look at Hebrews chapter 10, and if you recall, we're going over a series of statements, the let us statements. And tonight we've landed at Hebrews 10, 24 and 25. Let me read that for you. Hebrews 10, 24 and 25. It says this, "And let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works, not neglecting to meet together as the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near." Well, this is a great passage, and it's really a famous passage because lots of times what we do is we focus on verse 25, not neglecting or not forsaking the meeting together. So you got to attend church. But there's so much more packed in to this scripture passage. And I would say we go to 25, but really we need to never leave out verse 24. So let's look at that again. Verse 24 says, "Let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works." So let's just kind of break that down. The first thing I see here is that the author of Hebrews is telling us, consider others. Consider others first. And that is our job as believers. It is never our job when we participate in the local church to come through the doors and make it all about our wants, needs, and our desires. Hey, I wish Pastor Matt would play the music I like, or I wish the children's ministry would do this right here. This is my preference. It's never really about our preferences. Now, each of us are made in a way where we have likes and we're different in that way. We all have our preferences, but we're called to die to self, and when we come to church, we consider others first. And so this scripture is it's telling us, consider one another. Let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works. So we consider one another. Now, there's three types of people I see in the local church. One of them is what I call the pot stirrer. You see, everybody's stirring something in the church when you come. And the first one I'd say the pot stirrer. And they're just kind of the ones that, they're just all the time trying to stir some crap. And I hope our church doesn't have any of those folks. But if you are that way, you probably know who you are. But, and I think all of a sudden at times could be a pot stir. We get in the middle of, I'm going to stir this pot. And you know what? Stirring a pot, usually it stinks. And all you're doing is stirring a bunch of stink in your church. And how that happens is we just make it about our preferences and desires and what I want. And you get in there and just kind of raise the stink. And then there's some other types of folks that they're not the pot stirrer, but they like to sit back on the fringes and they like to provoke people to pot stir. And so they get their kicks out of just starting something, let everybody else do their dirty work, and they'll just provoke that person. Oh, hey, do you know this or that? Do you know what this person just did or said? And so they're sitting on the fringes. And again, I hope that's none of us, but that happens in some churches. But I hope all of us are like what this scripture says. It's the third type. And first I want to tell you about my wife. When we go to McDonald's to get coffee, she has a very distinct way she wants her coffee. First off, she wants it decaf only, so I can't mess up there. And a lot of times you go to places and they'll try to pass their caffeinated coffee off as decaf because they don't want to make any more decaf. But anyway, but she likes it with 4 creams and 4 sugars. And I've got to order that just right. And so oftentimes I get that order and I hand the coffee to her, and she might take a drink. It's like, that's bitter. That's bitter. Or it's not tasting right. Did you tell them 4 creams and 4 sugars? Well, yes, honey. Yes, sweetheart. Yes, Kelly, I did. Well, sometimes you got to get out the little stirring stick. And when you stir it up, it just makes the coffee bitter. And because that sugar wants to sit on the bottom. and that the creamer wants to sit on the bottom, so you got to stir it up and mix it all up. And boy, there's nothing like a good stirred cup of coffee. And if I stir that for her and hand it to her, she's like, "Whoa, boy, this is great coffee." And McDonald's does have some good coffee. And that's how we should be. We stir people up and make them better. That's our goal. And what this scripture actually says that our goal when we come to church should be to stir others to love and good works. Stir others to greater love and to greater good works. And I'm thinking, okay, as we're stirring people, we're stirring them to greater acts of love in the gospel, that they become greater pictures of the gospel in their community. We're stirring them to love their neighbor better. We're stirring them where they're more giving to other people and not looking to self. And this was what was going on in the other church. The early church, not the other church, the early church, they knew how to stir each other up. Let's look in Acts chapter 2. This is the first church. Verses 44 and 45 say this: "And all who believed were together and had all things in common. And they were selling their possessions and belongings and distributing the proceeds to all as any had need." And so they were stirring each other up through the good works and stirring each other up to, each one was doing greater works because they were being stirred and encouraged by others to get after it, to be about the work of Jesus. So how are you stirring people? Are you stirring people and discourage them from God's work? Are you sitting there? Are you the person that's provoking others to stir up in a negative way? Or are you the person that is looking to stir God's people up? And so when we come to church, that's what we're here for. Let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works, not neglecting to meet together. And that's how we do it. We do it as a body of believers, not neglecting the meeting together as is a habit of some, but encouraging one another. You see, when we come together as a body of believers and we don't neglect meeting together, we give each other a momentum. And jumping back to the previous, where I was talking about stirring love and good works, we're also stirring people up in a way that builds their confidence in their salvation. We're speaking into them and saying, "Hey, I've seen God's faithfulness in your life in this way." And through that, they gain momentum to the finish line, because it's about making people endure in their walk with Jesus. And so the scripture says, don't neglect the gathering. You encourage one another just through your presence in being present at church. And the thing is, some believers had gotten out of the habit here in this passage. That's why it's saying, not neglecting is the habit of some. Now, let me just stop right here. Now, don't let this be an offense right now. We are going through a unique time in our church. And many of you you're the most dedicated. And because of this pandemic, you can't be with your body of believers. And let me just encourage you, as soon as you get back, get back. But don't take this scripture as something to view as a negative in your life. Just remember it as confirmation. Yes, I can't wait till I get back to the body of believers because I want to stir other people up in their faith. And here's as we round this out, and as we finish, we just have to notice in there, but encouraging one another, and we encourage one another through our meeting and encouragement all the more as you see the day drawing near. And so what the writer was saying, hey, listen, we're in the end times right now. I don't know when Jesus is coming, but we've got to be ready. And as things get harder, we've got to be encouraging one another all the more That's what this passage is saying. Let me read something to you if I can find it here. I found this in a commentary. It's right here. It says, to neglect Christian meetings is to give up the encouragement and help of other Christians. We gather together to share our faith and to strengthen one another in the Lord. As we get close to the day when Christ will return, we will face many spiritual struggles and even times of persecution. Anti-Christian forces will grow in strength. Difficulties should never be excuses for missing church services. Rather, as difficulties arise, we should make an even greater effort to be faithful in attendance. So church, hey, this is a good word. And this is a good word to put into practice as soon as we can get back together. Not forsaking, coming together. So if you're sitting at home and you can't come right now, find ways to reach out and encourage other people. And maybe it's through, some of us have been doing Zoom stuff. Maybe it's through Zoom. Maybe it's through sending a text. Maybe it's through giving a phone call to somebody. But reach out and find a way to encourage other believers and to stir them up and to give them momentum in their faith. Well, hey, that's a good word for us today. Hope to have a major announcement soon about Sunday school and that type of thing, so be checking back on Instagram and Facebook for that. I will see you later.